Greetings metalheads and welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George and today I'm back with another new release review. I feel like I'm doing these all the time at the minute because actually there's just so many freaking great albums coming out in 2024. And considering this is March, we've had some fantastic albums, some really big names releasing some really big albums. But also, it's not just the big names that we're focusing on. You know, we've got to look to the underground, look to the smaller bands, and there's some seriously bloody great material coming out at present. So, today's new release is one that came out about a week ago. In fact, I think it was a week to this very day. And it is a bloody brilliant album, I must say. This is Defectum Omnium from New Orleans, Louisiana, Groove-Thrashers. This is the mighty Exhorder. This is a legendary band, a name that has been hugely influential and very important in the metal world in general, specifically a huge driving force behind the kind of US groove metal movement and sound and style. We've also got the massive influence that they had with their earlier material on what became sort of death metal and definitely thrash metal as well. Just all round a excellent band. Not a huge amount of albums in their discography, considering that they formed in around 1985. I think Exhorder have been around since about the mid-80s. They split up, there's been lineup changes and all sorts of stuff. So actually it's been quite a tumultuous, turbulent career for Exhorder. However, at present, on fine form, delivering some red hot material, some seriously top-notch metal. So, Defectum Omnium. Now this album, I would admit, I'm surprised at how little I'm currently hearing about this album. And I think I can gauge why, because there's been a few albums coming out recently around the same sort of time from a few little notable bands. You know, you may have heard of Judas Priest, or you may have heard of Bruce Dickinson, or even Suicidal Angels, an album which, Profane Prayer, their new album, which I've reviewed recently on the channel, and it's bloody amazing. But I think, to be honest, it's a bit of an awkward time for Defectum Omnium to be coming out because there's just so many big, high-profile bands releasing and artists releasing great albums. That said, in terms of musical quality, this album is right up there. I have to admit, with those other big, notable bands, I either haven't heard the new albums or I've only heard it a couple of times. So this album wins in the fact that I have listened to this album probably in excess of about 10 times in the last week, and I love it. I think it's a great album. So, Exhorder. First of all, we'll have a little look at Exhorder in 2024 because, well, in 2023, 2024, because there's been a few changes. So, although Exhorder returned after a long hiatus in, I think it was around 2018, 2019, with this absolute gem of an album, Mourn the Southern Skies, which I have to say is an absolutely fantastic album. Although they returned a few years ago, this is the second album, and since their return, there has been a few more lineup changes. So at present, if I just open up the little booklet, we can see the band here, Exhorder. So we've got the key founding member, Carl Thomas, guitars and vocals still at the forefront there, still the driving force behind the band. He's also joined by Jason Vi Brooks and Sasha Horn. So Jason on bass and Sasha on drums. I believe they joined in around 2017. So actually, yeah, I believe they were both present on this previous album. Jason and Sasha, yep, so they were both present on Mourn the Southern Skies. However, there's been another change. We've got a new guitarist in the fold. We've got Pat O'Brien, who you may be familiar with, if you can see the line up there in the top corner, may be familiar with as an ex-member of the mighty Cannibal Corpse. So you've got a pretty solid guitarist in the band now as well. Not to detract from any previous guitarists, but yeah, this is the band at present. So there's been a few more changes since. So the album is a good continuation, but I would also say that there's a lot of progression. There is some distinct differences between More Than Southern Skies 2019 and Omnium Defectum 2024. But that is no surprise, because Exhorder, throughout their short catalogue, have undergone quite significant changes with each album. If we look back to the very beginning in terms of their studio albums, so I don't have them as individual albums, unfortunately, but I do have this rather lovely reissue, sort of double pack containing the first two albums. We've got the legendary, almost verging on death, thrash, Slaughter in the Vatican album, which is a absolute masterpiece, and also it's a bit of a fan favourite cult classic of an album. It's one of those albums that sits right on the upper end of the extreme scale in thrash anyway. In terms of its extremity, it's leaning more towards death metal at times, just like bands such as Demolition Hammer or Morbid Saint do, for example. And then a few years later we have The Law, which, to be honest, is an all-out kind of groove thrash album. But so there's a massive stylistic change between these two, and I won't go into a huge amount of detail about those, just because if you want to, you can check out the bands you need to hear recommendation review that I have already done previously on Exhorder, and I'll put a link to that at the end of this video, so you're welcome to check that out. But just to symbolise, Exhorder have undergone quite a lot of changes between each albums. They had a hiatus, long period of inactivity. Then they came back with this album, More Than Southern Skies, which is a fantastic album. But I would say that this is definitely more of a thrash metal album. There's a lot of really quite thrashy parts, and it's bloody brilliant. It's a fantastic album. But it's a very much more of a thrash album. I feel personally that Defectum Omnium combines in equal measure. You've got the thrash elements, you've got the groove metal elements. I'd say there's also a little bit more technicality in there. They go for some sort of changes in pace, some changes in style, little fluctuations here and there. There's moments that are very sort of hardcore punk crossover style. Then there's other moments that are, outright melodic metal, groovy stuff indeed. So it's a good showcasing of all of the different eras and sounds and styles that they have experimented with and mastered throughout their career. Now, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on this subject, but of course, let's just get this over and done with. There's the obvious Pantera kind of comparison there, and I personally don't feel that the Pantera comparison needs to be brought up, certainly in relation to Defectum Omnium, but there are certain stylistic sounds. Obviously, Exhorder are cited as being an influence on Pantera rather than the other way around, but they're both New Orleans bands, or they're friends from things that I've read in the past, where Carl Thomas has said that actually, fantastic, more power to Pantera if they were interested and influenced by what Exhorder were doing, but maybe it's more like a mutual thing, brotherhood of metal, and they're influencing each other. Who knows? Not going to go into a huge amount of detail in that, because that's a debate for maybe another time. But I would say that there are certain elements of Exhorder's sound, of Defectum Omnium, that are definitely going to satisfy and appease fans of Pantera album number 5 through 9, shall we say. So, now that that's out of the way, let's just concentrate on how bloody brilliant this album is and how enjoyable it is. It's actually quite a long album as well. It's near the sort of 1 hour mark. We've got 12 tracks in total. Hopefully you can see that clearly enough. But 12 brilliant tracks. Start to finish, this is a really gripping album. Each track is actually very distinctly different as well. There's not a huge amount of tracks that just kind of meld into one another and, you know, get lost in the crowd. There isn't really that issue here. We kick off with a track called Wrath of Prophecies, which is a perfect example of, you know, the kind of stylistic alteration where they can sound like they're thrashing out 1 minute, and then you've got these big groovy parts, and then it's a little bit kind of more technical. The whole time you've got fantastic guitar work, absolutely brilliant. I mean, the riffs and the chugging and the leads is absolutely fantastic. I would also say that this is without a doubt the best vocal performance that we've had from Carl Thomas. He sounds fantastic. At times it's like massive, you know, powerful Messiah McCollin style vocals, and then at times it's, you know, it's very much more in line with like a thrash or crossover style vocal approach. But what a brilliant way to start an album. An absolute killer. It goes straight into Under the Gaslight. Again, lyrically, it's all, well, not all, but it's quite often this sort of tongue-in-cheek approach. It's very risky stuff, certainly if you're easily offended, I suppose. But to be honest, it's just keeping the attitude. It's the attitude and the whole ethic that Exhorder have maintained. You know, it's bold. It's bolshy. Under the Gaslight, another great one. Again, a good mix of quite groovy parts. It's definitely the sort of stuff that you could headbang along to quite nicely. And good thrash elements. Then we get Forever and Beyond Despair, the third track, which is one of 2 tracks on this album that definitely bear more of a hallmark of the kind of punk, hardcore infused thrash style. It's very fast, much faster pace. It's got attitude. It's definitely headbang worthy. It's just bloody good stuff. Amazing guitar work as well. Love the drum sound. Then we've got The Tale of Unsound Minds, another brilliant one. Divide and Conquer, very groovy. Very groovy. You get these massive bloody walls of riffs. Really groovy stuff. Heavy. Little thrashy moments there. Then we get Year of the Goat, which is definitely a thrasher. Faster paced, right, full throttle, you know, much more akin to the sort of stuff that we had throughout the majority of the brilliant Mourn the Southern Skies. Then we got Taken by Flames, another brilliant one. A solid Exhorder track, combining that good thrashy style with a little bit more technicality, a little bit more sophistication. Little bit more experimental at times, this album, I feel. Then we're into track 8, which is Defectum Omnium / Stolen Hope. Both that track and the following track, 3 Stages of Truth / Lacing the Well, they're both longer tracks, 6 or 7 minutes long in excess. They both have interesting sort of intro pieces. So Defectum Omnium starts with almost like a chant intro, which really kind of builds the atmospherics before you get these massive groovy riffs, huge bloody riffs, great stuff. And actually the second part of that track, the kind of Stolen Hope part, is an album standout in my opinion. Bloody brilliant stuff. As with 3 Stages of Truth, got like an acoustic, very nice intro there, very accomplished musicianship. Into Lacing the Well, which does kind of bring that NOLA style, a little bit of that kind of southern flair, just like with what you get on the final track, Your 6. Definitely southern vibes there. Definitely brings like Crowbar or Down to mind at times. Yeah, just brilliant tracks. Longer, progressive pieces, but show a sophistication. But those 2 tracks in particular, they do really stand out because of their quite distinct intros, and then also they lead into what is just an absolute standout moment. Then we get Sedition, track number 10, which is definitely a punky, spiky, hardcore crossover thrash sort of style track. Short and sweet. Desensitized is another kind of belter. That's more of a thrasher as well. But yeah, it's just really good. It's really good. And then we get the brilliant, as I alluded to, sort of more southern sounding Your Six, which closes off the album there. But start to finish, it's a really enjoyable album. As I say, it's not just an outright 1,000 miles an hour thrash album, nor is it a Pantera copycat, Cowboys from Hell, or Great Southern Trendkill replica. Nothing like that. Nothing at all. It bears the characteristics and the sound and style of Exhorder. Certainly, if you were into this album, then you are 100% going to enjoy Defectum Omnium. There's a lot of continuity there, but there's also, I would say, a little bit of a scaling back of the thrash approach in comparison. But again, Exhorder have explored some slightly heavier elements with big crushing riffs. Maybe that's an impact or an influence of Pat being in the band. You never know. But they've also got more progressive elements in there. They're experimenting. It's a little bit more experimental. I think there's definitely a growth there, if you like. But actually, it's just a fantastic album. If you've never heard of Exhorder, I would really, really recommend delving back into these sort of heritage albums, because these two in particular, Slaughter in the Vatican and The Law, have been so massively influential and are held in such high regards. And also, this album really was impactful. The More on the Southern Skies album, which is magnificent. But check out this album. If you need convincing, you want to check out the opening track, Wrath of Prophecies. You also want to check out Forever and Beyond Despair. And then I would personally recommend checking out the kind of slightly longer tracks there, Defectum Omnium, Stolen Hope, and 3 Stages of Truth, Lacing the Well. Because they are just stunning stuff. Long live Exhorder. Bloody brilliant band. Still relevant in 2024. Album number 4. Could it be the best so far? Probably not going to beat the legacy status of the previous albums. However, it more than lives up to expectations, in my opinion. What are your thoughts and opinions, my friend? Have you heard Defectum Omnium? Rather. Have you heard this album? Have you not? Check it out. Do not miss out, because it's some excellent metal. What are your thoughts and opinions on Exhorder, Defectum Omnium? Please do feel free to share your thoughts and opinions on this one, my friends. Always enjoy thoughts and opinions of others on this. Get a bit of discussion going. Thanks for watching, my friends. Please do feel free to like, subscribe, share, support. I'm very grateful for all your continued support for No Nonsense Metal and for keeping this channel going. Thank you. Check back soon for more reviews and recommendations of all the good heavy things. And until next time, take care, my friends, and stay heavy.